Hello, everyone. I'm Sonali Gupta, clinical psychologist and author of the book Anxiety, Overcome It and Live Without Fear. In the midst of COVID-19, last 3 months, as a therapist, I've been doing therapy sessions, from my couch over video calling. And it has been anxiety provoking. I feel anxiety when my clients are crying. I can see it, but not extend tissues, to them. It's also this odd time where my client concerns and my concerns are exactly the same in strange ways, and there is a solidarity about it. At the same time, when my book came out in midst of all this, which is on anxiety, it felt very surreal. And I don't think there has ever been a time before, at least for all of us, as I call myself an elder millennial, when all of us have been connected by so much of collective anxiety in our day-to-day life. The idea of writing this book around anxiety came to me as I realized that both men and women struggle with anxiety. And over the last 6 to 7 years, from 2013 onwards, there has been a rapid increase in the number of people who report symptoms of anxiety and panic attacks, both of these. Also, I began to realize that in strange ways, people almost normalize anxiety. I think anxiety is one of those invisible conditions where people have normalized it to such a degree that people think it's okay to not seek help for it, and they just continue living with it. And the idea of writing this book at that time, the book was not written for the pandemic, it just released in the pandemic a month back, was for people to have an emotional toolkit which they could use to manage their own anxiety. Anxiety as an emotion is this feeling of nervousness, apprehension, restlessness that we experience when we think about tasks or situations linked to the future. It's not as much about the future as much about our lack of control in relation to those things. It also reflects in those moments when we are not sure about how we would handle a particular situation with a particular individual. And, anxiety can at times be very overwhelming. In fact, I felt that all of 2019, overwhelmed was the word for the year. And I believed in 2022, overwhelming has continued to remain the word for the year. Having said that, anxiety as an emotion, like all other emotions, is not a negative emotion. It is something which has its own positive and negative. Anxiety evolved as an evolutionary response. Anxiety came into being to protect us from impending danger, to also keep us aware and also keep us prepared for what's lined up, right? All of us know, like just today, before I'm going to speak to all of you, I did my prep so that I know what I'm going to be talking about. And there was this little bit of anxiety, which is healthy anxiety, which helped me prepare and then be ready for this conversation. So at the same time, with our forefathers, the emotion helped them, when they went out to the forest, when they were hunting, it helped them protect from the predators, from the saber-toothed tiger. They knew if there was a tiger, in the wild who could come in, and a possible sound, a possible, rustling of the leaves told them that there was a predator out there, and it helped protect them. At the same time, in the world that we live in today, we wake up in the morning to a series of messages, on our phone, whether they are emails, whether they are notifications. Not just that, also, you have a flight to catch, and in the pre-pandemic world, you would think that I'm going to be getting late for the flight. You're also thinking about times that you're running late for a meeting, a cab has been cancelled. Our triggers are no longer just present oriented. Our triggers are also anticipatory, and they're also future oriented now. And while we know so much about what's happening around us, we don't know how our brain works. So our anxiety has increased in times like today because there are far more triggers, and we live in an environment which is in flux and in uncertainty. And we forget the fact that our brain reacts to an imaginary and to a real life stressor in a similar way, which basically means that knowing that there could be a tiger, in the wild out there to attack us, or a tiger being there, both are capable of throwing our body into a state of fight, flight, or freeze. So at this given time, we all are feeling far and far, more anxious and worked up, because we are constantly living with the fear that there are situations that are daunting that we have to deal with. And our anxiety, it gets overwhelming. It becomes a negative emotion when it starts controlling us, in the form of panic attacks. When we are not able to, sleep in the night, when it is so high that we engage in avoidance behaviors. Internet is filled with all these memes of people talking about how they don't want to go to this party because they are massively feeling anxious, and anxiety. And those are moments where anxiety is overwhelming, and it takes a negative flavor which needs to be addressed. Having said that, anxiety is one of those emotions which never really goes away. All we can just do is to manage it. At the same time, if we learn to manage it, our quality of life increases. In last 16 years of my work, one of my experiences with my clients is that the time between 9 p.m. in the night and about 3 a.m. is the time when most people are likely to have panic attacks. I think, in an urban life, possibly those are the only times when we give ourselves the permission to get anxious, to worry. So I think it's in a time that we are living in, it's most important for all of us to reimagine anxiety and to see it as one of those emotions that's not purely negative. I think also one of the biggest myths I hear from people constantly is when people tell me, oh, I know A or B who doesn't feel anxious at all. Trust all of us at some most common myths around anxiety is that happy events don't trigger anxiety. That's not true at all. We know that whether it's marriage, whether all these are, and when it comes to the triggers, everything right from our workplace to then what's happening around us in relationships, all these are triggers to our anxiety in some or other way. We live in a time, even our relationships, like Indian kids share a relationship with their parents, which is a mix of guilt and anxiety. Also, love and anxiety go a long way together. We all know that, right? And we live in the age of accelerated intimacy. Here is what we can do to deal with anxiety. About 6 years back, I struggled with burnout. And one of the things that I realized for myself, and a term that I came up with, was pause rituals. While we all acknowledge and realize the importance of pause in our life, pause ritual, in my eyes, as a term that I use, is an antidote for optimizing our resources, time, and energy in a seamless manner. I don't use the term task because tasks have a quality of something that has to be done. With pause rituals, I feel that it's most important that in our day-to-day life we figure out a way where we do some activities which are self-soothing to us and that help us cool down, and it's something that's built into our structure, into our schedule, into our day. So these could be activities like, whether it's journaling, whether it's meditation. The idea is to just monotask and not multitask. So by this, what I primarily mean is that we are doing one activity at a time. And so if I'm going for a walk, I would just go for a walk and not listen to a podcast at that particular time. And pause rituals are something that you, I, all of us can do, engage in, and we don't need to depend on it. You need to find, whether at a physical level, whether it's exercise, at an emotional level, whether it's meditation, whether it's listening to music, at a psychological level, where I'm reading, what is that self-soothing activity that in turn helps you calm down? And that is your own pause ritual. One of my oldest clients in therapy is about 80 years old. When she was 78, she reached out to me for therapy. And in the last 2 years, she has made massive changes. She has learned to manage her anxiety. And that reminds me of how all our brains are capable of neuroplasticity, which basically means that the brain has a capacity to rewire itself. So, no matter how old you are, where you are, and whenever you start, you can also learn to manage your anxiety. Begin with self compassion, learn to be kind to yourself, and it's never too late to manage your anxiety. Thank you for listening to me.